Right, this lesson is going to be focused on learning about how Maya deals with units of measure and also how to use its measuring tools. Now, I'll say right off the bat, Maya is not a CAD software, okay? It's not designed to really be a piece of software that creates perfect precision parts to be CNC milled, 3D printed, laser cut, etc. But there are a few tools in there that'll make it easier. It's mostly an artistic design program. It's meant to create characters and it's meant to animate. It's meant to do lots of things. It's not a CAD software. If you want to learn CAD software, you learn Fusion 360 or AutoCAD or lots of the other different amazing pieces of software out there that are designed to make precision parts and pieces. That being said, we do want to know the size of things sometimes, and you never know, a character, you might want to 3D print it one day and you need to scale them. And even when you're designing structures, sometimes it's easier if you're going to create something very photorealistic to create it with real world dimensions. So the first place you're going to want to do is, just to understand what we're dealing with in Maya is if I make a cube in Maya, you'll notice if I go to my channel box settings here, I have a scale of 1 by 1 by 1. And that just means basically like when you look at the grid that comes on Maya, each of these grids is a Maya unit. That's just sort of a general placeholder for whatever unit of measure you're using, whether it's centimeters, inches, millimeters, feet, meters, which I'm going to show you how to change in a minute. But this grid represents one unit at a time, right? So when it says this cube is one unit by one unit by one unit, well, you can see since it's in the center, it spans half the unit, the grid to the left, half the grid to the right, half the grid on the Z depth, and half on the vertical, right? So you add those two halves and that's one whole unit. If I moved it over to the left, which I can do, you'll notice if I fit it right in the grid, it pretty much fits the, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't have a very good view on it. It fits the grid just fine, especially if I go to like an above view and move it over. You'll notice there it is, one full unit, etc., etc. So other than the perspective view, which is warped a little bit. So that's just to help you understand how that's happening and what that unit of measure means, right? Now, how do I change the unit of measure so that what does that one Maya unit represent? Well, go up to Windows, come down to Preferences, Settings and Preferences, click on Settings, and you have working units, right? So mine are set to inches right now just because I can visualize inches in my head, being from the United States. I wish I could visualize centimeters and millimeters. Well, I'm pretty good at millimeters. I'm getting a lot better from digital manufacturing and whatnot, but it's just easier for me to know an inch or a foot or a yard, so I have mine set to inches. And I can hit save, and then that just means each of these grids or each unit here represents an inch. So my cube is 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch. If I export this as an OBJ or send it to another, it's going to come in with that unit of measure. So, very cool, right? So I can scale this. I can say, oh no, I want this to be 2 by 2 by 2, and now I have a 2 inch by 2 inch by 2 inch cube, right? And it's pretty easy as you move forward. However, things do get more complex as you begin to, modify your objects. So say if I go to face mode here and I start extruding things and rotating them and playing with their dimensional qualities and whatnot, and then I come back and I go to object mode and I click on this, you'll notice it still says 2 by 2 by 2 because that was the original unit in there, but this object no longer is really 2 by 2 by 2, it's this other thing, right? Particularly if I happen to go to, say I bring up my modeling toolkit and now I smooth this object, so I do it a factor of 3 and hit OK. Now I click on this object and I go to my channel box. It's still saying 2 by 2 by 2, but it's totally not 2 inches anymore. It's just scaling it based off of that original. So things get a little bit more tricky, right? So like, how do I measure something like this that's no longer just that original unit that was 2 by 2 by 2? Well, I'll go back to this one just because it's less vectors and will be easier to do so. That's where Maya does have some cool measuring tools built in. So if you come up here to create and you come down to measure tools, you can bring in what's called the distance tool, and that's helpful, right? And I'm actually going to go to shaded here. I want to see my I like to see my wireframe on shaded just so I can kind of see where all my points are and things like that, so I can get more exact measurements as I possibly can. So I have some great tools in my, I'm going to go to a side view just to take a look at this. And again, let me turn on that wireframe on shaded just so I can see what I'm working with. So now that I have activated my my measuring tools, actually it looks like I created a locator by accident, so I'm going to delete that. I'm going to go to create, and like I said, measure tools, distance tool. I can go around and I can really willy-nilly draw these in anywhere I want. And as soon as you draw a second one, it's going to give you a measurement between them. You'll notice that was 3 units plus 0.008387 because it wasn't exact, right? I kind of went 1 unit over. Now, if you hold down the letter V while you put on these, it'll snap to vector points on your object. That is a very useful thing to know. So I click there, and I click on this one here, and you can see I got a perfect measurement of 2. And that is 2 Maya units, 2 inches, since that is my unit of measure, right? So that's very helpful. I could also click from here. Whoop, let me hold down V again. And then hold there. And hold down V. Oh, I wasn't holding V, I was holding C. Now let me undo those. Let's do it again. V, one there, and one there. Now you can see that is approximately 0.896846 inches. And that makes sense. It looks like it's slightly below, but the V, it snaps to vertices. That really helps a ton, right? And then I'll do it again, V, and snap there. And it looks like that one has been extruded to 1.905365. So really nice as you move through these, right? Again, I'll hold down V. I'll put another point here and another point here. There's my 2 again. I could go from, if I hold down V, snap here and get a vertical. That's too high, right? I could even do, just to see overall length of this thing, V there and V there. And I can see I'm starting to get, like, at least on an angle there, 5.6 inches, right? I could do also V here and then come across, and I was able to get 5.55. I held down shift when I made that to get that straight line across, so I know my overall width is 5.51587. So pretty useful stuff. I can get those dimensions. If I hold down shift, I get a nice straight line all the way across. If I come from here to here, I get a vectored angle, and it makes it really easy. Now, one last trick I will show you. If I take all these, my original cube, and I hold down shift and select all these on my outliner, and I hit Command G on my keyboard, or Control G if you're on a PC, you can always go to, I believe it's Edit, and come down to Group for hierarchy, but I'm going to do the shortcut, Command G. I make a group, and then what's nice about this, you know, there they all are in my perspective view. If I scale the group, watch what happens. My numbers scale with me. So I get this nice active view of everything that goes with it, right? So that helps a ton. And if I want to hide those, I can always go into that group and grab all the locators holding shift, Command G those inside, and then I could just hit H on my keyboard and hide them, and then bring them back when I want. And just know that I always need to scale that group up and down, and it's going to make my life a lot easier. So, long story short, even though Maya isn't the best at making super accurate parts, these measuring tools are pretty awesome. You can do a lot with them. You can maintain kind of an awareness of what scales are, even when you can't quite see them in your channel box editor, particularly when you modify past just a simple primitive form. All right, that's it. Short and sweet. Enjoy learning about making scale objects and playing with units of measure, and have a good one.